you've got to learn two really important lessons. Now, I'm 13 at this point, so keep that in mind. Tell me what I need to do the quickest way possible so that I can get on this dirt bike. And he goes, one, you need to learn responsibility. Okay, well, tell me how he goes, it's very simple. Get a job. Okay, 13 years old. So what is that going to look like? And he said, two, you need to understand that nothing in this world is free. If you want something, you need to work for it. So I will tell you to this date, Tyler, I will outwork any single human being.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
Well, I'm super pumped today to have a special guest, Mr. Kent Johnson, General Manager, COO. Is it COO or CEO at Baltimore Country Club?
COO. Yeah, I don't know that I'm ready for that CEO title. Oh, yeah.
You need to get a little bit more experience under your belt.
Yeah, exactly.
So I tell an interesting story in general about Baltimore Country Club. So when I was a superintendent at Sparrows Point, it was always a treat to go up there, spend time with Tim Kennelly, and just I hate to use this as a buzzword, but excellence at Baltimore Country Club across the board. And always really just appreciated things from just the gardens that they have and the fruits and vegetables that they grow, which seems silly, to the staff development programs and just a really, really unique culture. So that relationship evolved obviously when I got into what we're doing now, and has been fortunate whether to work one-to-one with the club on assistant roles, equipment manager roles, intern programs, and had the fortunate opportunity, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I got to come up to the spring employee kickoff meeting and talk about feeling like out of place a little bit, but it was super impressive to see how much passion people have for Baltimore Country Club. So thanks for coming on today, Kent, to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
And for those that want to know a little bit about you and your career journey, tell us how you got to, I feel like I'm interviewing you actually. Tell us how you got to where you're at today and trace your career steps.
Well, I'll limit it just to, for the most part, just to private clubs, although there's a couple of, I guess, key elements that kind of even led me to hospitality is in general. So it started, I grew up in a rural area in Newmarket, Maryland, which Newmarket now is not what Newmarket was then. Then it was nothing but farms and cow fields. And so as a kid, the only thing that I wanted was a dirt bike. And my father was relentless in telling me no, and he would tease me about it until finally one day he takes me up into the barn and there's this dirt bike. It wasn't new. It didn't matter. That was the thing that I wanted more than anything. So I go to get on the bike. He's like, absolutely not. He goes, before you get on there, you've got to learn two really important lessons. Now I'm 13 at this point, so keep that in mind. So I said, okay, what's that? Tell me what I need to do the quickest way possible so that I can get on this dirt bike. And he goes, one, you need to learn responsibility. So, okay, well, tell me how I learn responsibility at 13 years old. He goes, it's very simple. Get a job. Okay, 13 years old. So what is that going to look like? And he said, two, you need to understand that nothing in this world is free. If you want something, you need to work for it. So I will tell you to this date, Tyler, I will outwork any single human being. And two, the responsibility was a job as a busboy in a crab house in Frederick, Maryland. It was the best job that I have probably ever had. And that's why my retirement ambition is to go back to being a busboy. And in that moment, I fell in love with the industry as a whole and knew that was what my career was going to be in. Gibson Island was my first club job, was completely by accident. My first wife, I've only been married 2 times, and Shannon and I have been together 16 years, just for context. So her roommate's boyfriend was the manager of Gibson Island. And he said, look, I need an assistant. Would you be interested in doing it? So I went down, I talked to him, and he promised me this great thing. He goes, oh, you're going to work 5 days a week. It's, you're going to work however many hours a week. It wasn't anything significant. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. He goes, now you're going to have to take a pay cut to come down here and do this. But at the end of it, I was working in DC at the time, so the traffic was murderous. I didn't really care. So I get there and I am working 6+ days a week. I'm working 70 to 80 hours a week until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was a little rough. He got let go 6 months in, and the GM came to me and he said, okay, you're going to do this on an interim basis. And over the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to be interviewing other people. And during the interim process, we'll either decide that you're going to get the job or we're going to let the new person decide whether or not they keep you. That was November 30th, 1998. That day, I sat down, wrote a list of 9 goals that are still on my desk today.
Wow.
And that was it. So I got the job offer there. Then about 5 years in, we did an event for the New York Yacht Club. And I won't bore you with all the gory details, but after the event, the GM calls and offered me the opportunity to move to Newport, Rhode Island to work at the New York Yacht Club, which we had just finished a big renovation on our home, packed up the family and moved to Newport, Rhode Island, where we were for 4 years. And then when you talk about relationships, so it was a member of Gibson Island that called me and said that the GM position at the Elkridge Club was open and would I be interested in that. So naturally I said no 4 times. And finally on the 5th time, I called the president of the club back and said, okay, Mr. Wilson, I think, I'm missing something. I really want to do this. And he goes, well, you're too late. We fired a national search firm, so you're going to have to go through the process. So did that, got the position at Elkridge, was there for 11 years. And then the opportunity at BCC came up, and I've been here now for a little over 8 years.
You just brought up something I think is really interesting. The fact that you said no to a job 4 times until you said yes. Walk through that, because I feel like that dynamic happens. I think people are afraid to say no. Actually, that is what the context of the question is really around. Is like, they're afraid to say no. How did you get to yes?
I think what it was is I had just signed a brand new agreement with the yacht club. We were getting ready to do a really big project and building a new sailing center. We had just gotten the team to a place that things were really, really good. And I just didn't think that it was something that I was ready to do. And so like I said no. And despite, their pressure was, hey, really, really want you to be here in Baltimore. We think you'd be a great fit. And finally, I was talking to my wife at the time and just said, look, I think I'm missing an opportunity here. And so when you talk about faith, you talk about different things and being led in the right direction at the right time. And I think that was really it. And so a little divine intervention, I think, that finally woke me up and made me say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Elkridge isn't a place to hang your hat for a number of years. If anybody's not been to Elkridge, it is a really unique, special, very special club. And 11 years at a place like, did you ever think you'd leave there?
I didn't until we got to a point. The club had an opportunity to buy the church next door. It was the only other land left that would have allowed Elkridge to truly expand its property. And when the club declined to move forward with that, then the decision became pretty easy at that point to say, look, for now, we've done everything that we can possibly do at Elkridge from a GM's perspective. And it was time really to move on. And when the BCC opportunity came up, I mean, how many opportunities truly exist to apply to lead a platinum level club without having to pick up and move your family, right? Which at that point, the kids were all still in middle school, middle school, I guess, at the time. So it would have been a really tough thing to try to do. Just, again, it was one of those things that just worked really well.
So is there any big changes for you that went from being at, a quaint, quiet club like Elkridge, and I say that respectfully because it's still a pretty good size operation, like very high expectation facility, to multi-campus, platinum level club, Baltimore Country Club?
Yeah, it's definitely a different sort of scale and scope. And so what's really interesting about this is when I was at Elkridge, my mission was to sink BCC in every conceivable manner. So funny that we actually used to refer to BCC as the evil empire.
That's funny.
And so now, here I am as the guy that's leading the evil empire. So it's kind of funny in that respect. It is bigger, but when you think of bigger, you have to think of bigger in context, right? Bigger also means additional resources, additional team to be able to deal with the volume and those kinds of things. So yes, it's certainly more of a challenge. And, since 2018, when I got here, we were an $18 million operation, and we just closed our books for this past fiscal year, and we were 33 million, not including entrance fees and capital dues. So it's definitely a big place, but we have an amazing team. Organization and selecting the right people to be around you and to support you that is the most crucial thing that you can possibly do.
I have it in my archives here somewhere, but I have this little pamphlet that little flip book, and it says great people make favorite places, right? And I think you give this out to the staff as just sort of like, hey, here's our credo, here's our core values, here's our mission statement. What does that mean to you, and how did the club get to that sort of statement? Because it's something that I know that you guys wear with a ton of pride.
Yeah. So this is the third iteration of The Simple Truth. So this is based on a book that I read in 2005 called The Simple Truth About Your Business, written by Alex Brennan Martin. And the book has been so impactful to me that over the course of, I guess this has now been 2005, so 21 years, I've probably given out a minimum of 3,500 copies of this book. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. I'll share my secret a little bit, but I had a kind of a cool moment that happened with that this past year. So reading the book, so Tyler, for me, I didn't graduate from college, and so that's led to this whole issue of imposter syndrome and all kinds of other things. But well, that's a story for another day. But reading that book sort of crystallized for me how I felt about hospitality, what I thought the ideals of hospitality should be. And so I took the book back to the team at the yacht club, and we sort of distilled that down into the first version of The Simple Truth, which was welcome home, we'll take care of you. And it was just this really cool program that we put in place to kind of shift how the culture was at the time, which was the staff doing what was easiest and best for them, not what was best for the membership as a whole. And then when I got to Elkridge, put the same process in place, go through the same thing, and staff gets to welcome home, we'll take care of you. And so that was kind of a really cool moment. And I think the serendipitous part for me, there was this woman, Susan Mink, and if you ever had the opportunity to meet this woman, she is just this character, always speaks her mind. She was a member of Gibson Island, so I'd had the privilege to get to know her. And she pulls me aside one day at Elkridge. I think I was about 5 years in. And she goes, you started talking about this simple truth stuff. And she goes, I thought you were full of shit. And she goes, but here it is 5 years later, and I can actually see it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's, I guess that's a ringing endorsement to some extent. So we get to BCC, we start the same process, and immediately the team gets to welcome home, we'll take care of you. So I'm like, all right, this is, familiar territory. I know where to take things from here. And as soon as we got there, hard 90-degree right turn, and now I am in no man's land. Now, I mentioned I didn't graduate from college. I am now working with people that have MBAs, bachelors, all of these things. So I am just legitimately scared to death. So our next meeting, I asked our communications director, Chris Gillies, to just take notes. That's all I really wanted I just wanted to see what the context of the conversation was. And there on several different lines, one line was great people, another line was favorite places, and that was it. So that's what it was. And from there, it was creating the core values, creating our care philosophy and those kinds of things. And you mentioned credo, and some people refer to it as a motto. It's not any of those things. For us, this is a way of life. This is something that guides every single thing that we do, to the point, Tyler, the board has adopted this, all of our committees, it's embedded in our strategic plan. I mean, this truly, when you think about this, great really refers to two things, right? You have to be invited into membership here. So we make sure that we invite great people. One of the first things that new members or candidates are told is about how we treat our staff, how we respect our staff. And that is one of the quickest ways to find yourself out of BCC. Great also refers to the selection process that we use that begins with a culture call. So that is, we're going to talk to Tyler and say, Tyler, here are the things that we expect from you. Here's how we do things. And, we're going to ask you some questions and determine whether or not we think you're even going to be a fit for BCC in the first place. But once we have great people here, it's my responsibility and the staff's responsibility to make sure that BCC is a favorite place for them, their family, and their guests. And we will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that that happens. And likewise, it's my responsibility and the members' responsibility to make sure that BCC is a favorite place for the folks that work here. And we will go to the ends of the earth to make that happen. And so that's really what the crux of what this was. And, it took us a few years and a lot of changes and a lot of difficulty to get this to the point where we knew that we had something pretty special. And, now it's just one of those things that is truly how we lead every single day.
It's interesting because we're internally going through I don't want to say a rediscovery of the company, but just refinement of core values, mission, and a good friend of mine is kind of helped facilitating this a little bit as a third party to ensure that it's a real objective viewpoint. So hearing
Mhm.
that from you, it resonates with me because it's something that it's important to me. And I think when people have maybe a little bit crystal clear direction on what is important, helps you make decisions, right? Makes you when you get into tough, difficult situations for you could be it could be everything ranging from staff treatment, could be member treatment, could be a new program, could be, hey, we had a bad experience here. How do we deal with this? The whole range and gamut. So I've been thinking about that in myself internally of like, okay, when we deal with difficult searches or maybe difficult situations, what does that look like? And how do we like focus that back to the key core things so like we can lead with confidence and conviction? And I'm curious if that helps you guys and your team.
100% it does. I mean, so we're going through a search process now for director of catering events. So the woman that was in that position has been promoted to the AGM role. And so the very first interview that we're trying to get through, this candidate is walking into a group of 13 people, which is our entire executive team. And we ask, one of the questions is, obviously you've done some research to get to this point. What do you think it's going to be like to work here? And, when we start to get the answers from those questions, it's really cool to see how our team, like Drew Barnett, our new superintendent, or director of agronomy, is the youngest person by tenure on the team at 6 months. Everybody else is a minimum of 5 years. And so when you look at the cohesion of this group, how well we all get along, and then when they start talking about culture and when they start giving their viewpoint about what it's like to work here and the investment that the club has made in them, I mean, it's really kind of a cool conversation to see how that goes. And so that also leads the selection process. And that's why our interview process is as difficult as it is. Because at the end of the day, yes, we need somebody that's going to be able to do the job. But two, at the end of a long day, we want to make sure that it's somebody that we want to have a beer with. So it's,
I enjoy hearing that, and and again, I'm thinking about even our company, like the influence of like a BCC type thing is, you go through those experiences and you hear that level of passion and discernment. It actually has helped form our company in the level of discernment we want to have about candidates, just to make sure it's the right fit for the clubs that
Mhm.
we work with, right? And not every club you work with is going to have that same process. And I always try to say, find what's unique for you, and we're going to match that process to your
Mhm.
club, right? So I think it's really unique that you guys do that, and so that. But here's the thing that I find interesting about BCC: that's not just senior management.
Oh,
That's down to the line level staff, and that's no
Mhm.
BS for anybody that's listening. Like I've seen it to feel
mhm.
the employees that are legitimately empowered, promoted, and encouraged. And it's not signs on the wall either. By the way,
Oh.
it's legitimate. Talk a little bit about how you kind of get that, delegate that down into the line level staff.
Well, truly, I mean, that was one of the big issues that we had when we first implemented the simple truth and the core values is as an executive team, we were doing really well in terms of understanding what our mission was, understanding the culture that we wanted, understanding where we started and what the end game was. But when we realized that things were not filtering down to the other layers of the organization, we knew that we had an issue that had to be addressed. I had gone shortly after I got to BCC. I reached out to Jeffrey Kriefel at Congressional and said, "Hey, can I come and spend a day with you?" Jeffrey is somebody that I truly admire and respect and that operates at such a high level. And they had this sort of all hands leadership meeting, for lack of a better term. And I was blown away that at the time, the day that I went, they had been reading a book. And so I went back to the team and I said, look, I think what we need to do is we need to have this leadership meeting concept, but tailored to what we're trying to do at BCC. So what we did is we have 2 leadership meetings a month. The first is really just about interdepartmental communication. So we had silos that we needed to break down. So we've done that. That was awesome. And then the second is truly focused on mission, core values, simple truth, green folder stories, all of the above. And what you find now, and I would encourage you one of these days to come to one of these meetings just because it's really a cool experience. All departments are mixed together. There's not one department we don't allow them to sit together. And so the example that I'll give you, last year we were working on SOPs and you realize, so the opening of Roland Park, right? So a lot of that is food and beverage heavy, but you don't think about what that means to Kathy Wagner and her team. You don't equate that to what Drew and what his team have to do, or what David Bridges and the housekeeping team have to do. So imagine when you get these groups together and you build a complete SOP, right? But that's irrespective of what your position is or what your department is. We're working together as a team to be able to do that. So once we put those leadership meetings in place, how much better was it for us to start filtering down to every layer of our organization the importance of the simple truth, the importance of our core values, and what we expected from every single person on the team. And the second core value for us is empowerment through opportunity. Be impactful with your actions. And every person on the team is empowered to make a difference. And one of the comments that you hear a lot in private clubs is, oh, we're in the memory making business. I hate that. Memories, yes, that's great. And I appreciate that too. But the way that we approach this has to be meaningful. This is more than just making memories. I mean, these are people that we're here to make relationships with, that we're here to grow with, to, be able to celebrate some of life's major moments and just to provide opportunities for them in business and those kinds of things. So it is so much more than just making memories. And so now when you see the way that the entirety of the team interprets that in their own way, and, then we have Abby Rodriguez, whose sole responsibility is to take those ideas and put them into action. It puts us on an entirely different level.
All right. I feel like I'm about to get coached up by you, man. I'm going to have to send you a consulting fee. All right. So I'm real. We're going to go real time workshop on this. So I've got this idea of like core concepts, core vision, mission, right? How do you tactically, how is that person like getting that information and then executing on that? But you named Abby. Talk me through how's she doing that? Because I think there's a lot of people that hear this and say, man, this all sounds great, but like literally, how do I go and execute on it? And like, is it this big scary thing, or do we start small and simple?
Yeah, start small and simple. So one of the things that we do, and it's really kind of easy. So everybody, well, I'd say not everybody, but most people have a front desk, right? There's a lot of downtime at the front desk. So one of the things that we started 8 years ago is the front desk calls every single member on their birthday, right? And all they do is they say happy birthday. They remind them about the birthday program that we have, which is they get, their birthday meal and whatever. So they get the touch point with the member that says happy birthday, which goes a very long way that they even remember or that they do that. 2, they're going to come in for their birthday meal in most cases. They're not coming by themselves. So there's a revenue generation component of that as well. But the other piece of that is the front desk every day puts together a daily agenda. So that has all the events that are going for the day, all the reservations that we have in all the different locations, any VIPs that are coming, so board members, special guests, things like that. Then we have all member birthdays, and staff anniversaries. So that's the first thing that's looked at in the morning. From a birthday, just to stay on that theme, we have 2 of our hostesses that are artists. So they hand draw birthday cards for every single member that's coming in that day. And then they take them around and have the staff sign them. So that's just another level of a personal touch for us. If we know something about the individual, which is where Abby comes in, then we'll do something else for them. So Abby created this Memorable Moments initiative. And then her newest initiative is Habits of Connection, which is part of our BCC University program. So Abby literally teaches us in every single department how to connect with members, how to get the information about the members that we want so that we can build the member profile. And then we know even better how to go out and reach them in a very personal manner. So that's just another thing that we find to be incredibly just different in how we approach that, and just gives us better information and better ways to engage the membership.
All right, Mary, on my team, if you're listening, you have to get birthdays for every client, not just the team, every client we work with. You got to get birthdays now. So that's awesome. That's a real simple, one of my favorite books, and I was fortunate to meet him in person this past September, is Will Guidari, Unreasonable Hospitality. And he talks about little things like that, nothing earth shattering. It's the small little details and touch points like that can make people feel good, no matter what business you're in. So that really reminds me of that. You talked about BCC University. I really appreciate the fact that you brought that up. So expand on that. What is BCC University? Who gets involved in that? What does that all entail?
Yeah, so I guess 5 or 6 years ago, we were doing a staff survey, and we found that as happy as the team was, they weren't as engaged as what we wanted. And so HR director Lauren Kortsunis and I sat down and said, okay, how can we get the team to be more engaged in their work here at BCC, but also provide benefit to them in their personal lives as well? And so that's where the BCC University, and the U is YOU. That's how that concept came to be. And so this is a mandatory program for all full-time and part-time staff. And the way that this works is staff can teach classes based on their own hobbies and interests. Members can come in and teach classes based on their hobbies and interests. And then we curate class selections for them too. So we might bring in a member who's a real estate agent that's going to talk to those who are in attendance about first-time home buyers. We recognize that not everybody here is going to be in the hospitality industry as a career. So we might bring in and have brought in an attorney that works with all summer interns so they can talk to our folks about what it might be like on the journey to become a lawyer. We've done public speaking. We've done, intro to old world wines, new world wines, bourbon, dumpling making, cake decorating, time on the paddle courts, time on the golf course. And so first aid, CPR, and AED training. There's any number of classes that it's 70 or 80 classes a year that we teach. Those are taught by members. They're taught by staff. We also bring in celebrities. When we bring the celebrities in, we don't tell members who they are. So the staff members who they are, so that they're not they don't just rush in for that particular moment. So we got to interview Cal Ripken Jr., which is a really cool moment for us. They get the personal interaction. We've had some really, really cool folks that have done this program for us. And so it just is one of those things that resonates. And there's 4 mandatory classes that the staff has to take. If you're on the leadership team, you have to take a writing and communications class with our communications director. You have to do a governance class so that you understand how BCC is run. You have to take a history class so that you understand the history of BCC. And then you have to take Abby's Habits of Connection class.
Dude, sign me up. Like, I'm quitting my day job and I'm coming down there to do this. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I was on a call the other day with another, I would say, historic club that has similar traditions, and they're in the Philadelphia market. So there's only a few of those that you could probably think about. But the history and traditions is something that they embed into their senior management team, and even down to junior managers, because I think it's really important that they understand what the story has been over generations to be where they're at now. So really, really cool. Shifting gears just slightly. So you've had the opportunity to work with 3 really unique and very highly qualified superintendents: Ralph Mayola, Tim Kennelly, now Drew Barnett. Talk about the relationships you had with your agronomy team over the years and how that's evolved.
I would hope that between Ralph and Tim, and the relationship with Drew is still new at this point, is really about being a resource for them and providing resources to them. But that's the role of the GM. If you hire the right superintendent or director of agronomy, whatever it is, by all means, just get the hell out of their way and let them do what they do best, and understand and have the relationship with them that they know that they can come to you when they have an issue or they have a question. But it's truly just respecting them for who they are, for what they do, and knowing that yes, there's times that you might need to push them on a Monday outing, or you might need to push them because Ralph and Tim, both very, very different. The superintendent wants the best conditions in the world, and sometimes they don't want people on the golf course to destroy those conditions. So you do have to push the envelope at times, and I think each superintendent views those things differently. But I would tell you that even in the 11 years that I worked with Ralph, and the 7 years that I worked with Tim, it's never been an issue. I have never been at odds with a superintendent or had to push them in a way that was outside of anything. Those guys just, they're the best, and they know exactly what needs to be done. They're going to talk to you about what resources they need, and you just need to do your best in trying to work with the club and the board and, your finance committees and green committees to provide them what they need.
Yeah, I will say, to give a lot of credence, I think, of that spring meeting. I thought it was very interesting that Tim Kennelly was up there talking about Bermuda grass and the benefits to, like, we're not talking about 1 or 2 employees or senior department. We're talking about the entire club employees that were there. And I just sat there and was fascinated. I'm like, man, wouldn't this be something if the superintendent did this in every spring kickoff with employees? And I was like, what a way to like encourage the departments to understand the value and all the unique things that are going on the agronomy side, which again, we don't see something like that often, but I found it to be really refreshing and certainly appreciate, having like seeing a club like embrace that. Like that's one thing
Mhm.
that has been somewhat shocking to me, but also it's also refreshing to see when you see clubs value the agronomy department and the importance of that golf course amongst all the other amenities, right? I don't want to sit here
Mhm.
and say golf not number one, but in most private club settings, it kind of is the driver for everything at the club. But yet clubs are so disconnected to that department.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest things that I learned from Tim Kennelly is so I started here in mid-February of 2018, and I think it was my first day I had to go to the grounds department to have lunch. So one of the things that Tim did every year is during the off season, he would gather every department to come have lunch with the grounds team during the off season. That was Tim's way of making sure that we connected the grounds team to every other department. And so, yes, it's lunch, but then it's every person on the grounds team that has to get up and introduce themselves, and every other person from whatever department is attending to introduce themselves and talk about what they do. So it just gives this level of mutual respect to the entirety of the team. And you're not wrong. And BCC, I mean, golf here is something that's really, really important, but it leads to development in other areas, right? So BCC, the Championship East, is considered the crown jewel. What happens when you start viewing every other amenity through the same lens that you view the East Course, right? It's really not hard to imagine and to envision what change looks like in that respect. And that's led to some really cool things too.
You've got some of these events coming up, which I think is really it's always interesting to see how clubs of like tradition and heritage like a BCC I guess re-engage on hosting events because a lot of facilities say, nope, we're good. We don't want anything to do with that. Talk about
Mhm.
sort of like what you guys have coming down the pipe and how the club has sort of embraced those events.
Yeah, so over the course of the club's history, starting in 1899, we hosted the U.S. Open. We've hosted PGA Championship, Walker Cup, U.S. Women's Open, Senior Players Championship, U.S. AM. I mean, a lot of these really cool events. But after the 2007 to 2009 Senior Players Championship, there was a decision that was made back in the late 80s where we were asked to host some really cool events that, for whatever reason, the club declined. And I think that sort of tarnished our reputation. And then, it's either USGA or PGA. It's not necessarily both. So we fell out of favor with the USGA. And in 2018, the president at the time, Marty Brunk, decided that we wanted to go back and re-engage and go back to our tradition and history of hosting championship level events. So we immediately re-engaged with the USGA, and that means that you've got to go attend events and annual meetings and those things. We brought the USGA on site to, show them all the things that we had done, that we were doing. And after a couple of years, they awarded us with the 26 U.S. Senior Amateur and the 31 Women's Am. And then in between there, we have the 28 Western Am, which means that we chose 28 specifically because it's a Walker Cup year. That means we will have the best amateur players in the world here on property. So let's not mistake this, though. Not every member is thrilled that we're having these events because it does take the course and the clubhouse out of operation in some capacity. So as unfortunate as that is, but when we look to the history and tradition of what we've done, and then Tyler, add to that the importance of what that means when we have to talk to you about bringing somebody else into the property on the agronomy team, how important is it that we're hosting these events to attract better levels of talent to the club?
Yeah, it's interesting and I don't know what's the word here. I don't want to try to isolate our company that we only work with clubs hosting events, but I will say they're a lot easier jobs to fill when you've got that sort of pedigree and you've got that sort of event to really highlight, especially for a young professional that's just getting started in their career. And they may never host an event in their career at some other point, but getting that
Yeah.
exposure I think is critical. And when you host events, typically you can get volunteers from other clubs. And now again, from a
Yep.
recruiting standpoint, they're getting access in a very short time frame to see, wow, this is what BCC is all about or whatever facility.
Absolutely. We've sort of viewed that way too. And again, it allows us to get back to our roots and tradition and, investment back into the game, specifically amateur golf. So we love that aspect of it. But as challenging as the labor market is, the fact that this allows us to be in front of that and be more attractive in what is a tight market, I think just helps that much more.
So this is an interesting dynamic that I see about Baltimore Country Club that is so unique. And I actually love that the club, from my perspective, has done a great job about its brand and its brand in the
Mhm.
market. And they're unapologetic, whether that's being on ABC Morning News, whether it's having videos and really promoting that side because it is brutally hard. I mean, listen, I'm not going to change this conversation around hiring assistant, mid manager level roles. And I'm sure this is across all departments. You're not going to get dozens of candidates anymore. It doesn't matter
No.
if you're paying $100,000, $60,000. It's just the reality of the supply is just doesn't meet the demand. But I just love the fact that Baltimore Country Club has really embraced sort of being a community employer of choice, not just a private club employer of choice. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. I mean, we compete for the same talent as everybody else. So we have to figure out ways that BCC is going to stand out in the marketplace. So we focus heavily on best places to work, and so we've been very fortunate in that respect. So I think for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been at best places to work in Baltimore for large companies. So that means over the course of a year, we'll ramp up to 450 plus staff. So we want to make sure that we are truly a best places to work. And then I think last year we were best golf course to work as well. So that's always a good thing. I think one of the coolest things for us about that recognition is that's all administered by a third party. So that is truly what the staff sees in the value of being employed here. And, I think one of the other cool things that we hear is we are who we say we are. We're not that company and that club that's going to say, we're going to do all of these things in your interview. And then you get here and you find out that it's vastly different. So any of our leaders, when they're brought in, I have to sit with them for a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes to go through culture, to go through the simple truth, the core values, and what it's like to work here. Because the worst thing that we could do is not explain that to somebody new that wants to come and work here. And then all of a sudden we have this misalignment in terms of values. So now that new person isn't happy with being here. We're not happy that they're here. And, then a transition has to occur. And look, nobody's perfect. And we are certainly far from perfect in a lot of respects. So just making sure to every degree possible that we have alignment when and where we can makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's something most clubs really should be thinking about their brand and how they're getting that out into the market. And clubs I think have changed in terms of privacy, specifically over the last 5 years, which I think is a good thing. And again, I think there's strong leadership from the top to be able to govern that. We're not out there putting things out in the social media and all sorts of things that would be an embarrassment to the club. So I think clubs have been more open to that than what maybe when I was coming up through the ranks, was.
Yeah, it's really cool too. So we tend not to post a lot of things that we do for staff just because, anything that we do get recognized for, we want to make sure that was done organically because that is just that much more meaningful to us. And, we went through an exercise, I guess we're probably 4 or so years in now where we developed a new strategic plan. And of that strategic plan, we have 5 strategic anchors, one of which is the people strategy. And what's awesome about that is that's the board's recognition of investing in the leadership team and the entirety of the staff by giving us the opportunity to invest in the recruitment and retainment of staff. So there's really not been anything that we've asked for that the board has said no to. That includes, I guess we're in year 2 or 3 now. I mean, we have mental health therapists on staff for the team. So it's just another one of those little benefits that, that it's really cool just the way that the club invests in its people.
I got a whole business venture for BCC that they should be consulting with clubs all across the country and charging people to come spend a week to learn these things, man. I'm serious. Like this is a lot of clubs could benefit from if they can't implement everything, do one thing, one small little thing in your own unique way. So I love it. And that's a big reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast, man. I mean, there's really a short list of clubs that I've been fortunate to work with that like if you ask me to be there for a staff meeting, dude, I'm getting in my car and I'm driving 3.5 hours from State College because you learn a lot. You know,
Yeah.
the exposure there is really unique. One of the roles that I find interesting that I see for you and what I appreciate is your involvement in the industry as a whole. Beyond your, I don't know how you have time, dude. I mean, I really don't know how you have time to do all this stuff. But like your overall advocacy and the focus on growing the career. Talk a little bit about where do you see the club management industry going and the club profession going in the next 5 to 10 years from your vantage point? What gets you excited? What concerns you as well?
So, to start with the concern, so first of all, the industry as a whole, I think, is really just an incredible industry. I think that we've not done the best job in telling the story of the industry. And what I mean by that is when you look at the hospitality industry and you look at the programs that are available in college, club management, you really don't have any exposure to that until your junior year, and then it's an elective. And by that point, you have, all these hotels and restaurant groups that have already been in front of these students talking about careers and what it looks like there. And, why aren't clubs having those same conversations? And so I think that is truly an opportunity for clubs as a whole and for the industry as a whole to be better getting in on the ground floor when these, students are freshmen and sophomores so that they understand the viability of what it means to work in, a private club in addition to hotels and restaurants. And so to me, the benefit of clubs is, you get to create these relationships that are well past just the transactional, right? I mean, these are relationships that truly can mean something. And to me, there's value in that. And it gives you a freedom and a flexibility, depending, of course, that you've chosen the right club. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that too. So I think the future of the industry is bright. I think we need to do more for advocating for students earlier on in their college careers. But I was also I found it incredibly rewarding where we hosted the CMAA student conference last year. There were 160 students here. And one of the panels that we did was we had some transplants that have come into the club industry from the hotel or from the restaurant industry, and then a couple of young folks that are relatively new into the club industry, and just had a Q&A session with the students about why they should consider clubs versus hotels and restaurants. But when you looked out at this group of students, and then if you were at conference this year and the career day and those kinds of things, I mean, it is incredible to see what this future holds. And I'm really happy that we hired one of them. Althea joins us on June 8th. And I am so excited for her to be here. And I think the future is really great. We need to do some things.
Man, I'll tell you what, I will, as a first time participant or, participant at the CMA conference, I was blown away and in different ways. Like the trade show floor, it's not as big as a GCSA. I mean, neither of them are as compared to the PGA show, totally different beast. But I really enjoyed it because you got to see some really unique, different things that, exhibitors and that career center that they had in the middle of the trade show floor. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, maybe there's 20, 30 students. Like it was busy both days of the trade show floor. And I thought, this is really awesome to see. And I'm not a, I don't want to say this. I'm a club guy, but I'm not a club management guy. I am and I am it, right? I am and I'm not. But it was fascinating to see that how much is being focused on nurturing and developing. I'm really passionate about workforce development. So it was really cool to see that at a national level. And all the different universities and hospitality programs that there are.
I think one of the cool things about the industry too, and this is a big mistake that I made early on in my career because of that whole imposter syndrome thing. The GMs and the other managers that exist in this industry will absolutely take the time to invest in you, to work with you, to develop you, to do those kinds of things. And really, in most cases, all you have to do is ask, right? And if you have the courage just to ask the question, I mean, it is amazing the results that you'll get from some of the most talented people in the hospitality industry as a whole, not just limited to private clubs. And I think that's, that a lot of that time it just means you have to face the fear of being able to just broach the subject and have the conversation. That's where I failed. It's amazing the investment that these people will make in you. And it's incredible to see the journeys of, where people start from, Mitchell Platt, for goodness sakes. I mean, Mitchell started at Woodhome as a busboy.
Yeah.
Right. And now leads one of the best city clubs in the country. And there are more stories than that than there are not. And I just think that that's one of the most incredible things about the industry as a whole.
I'm laughing because in one ways, you talked about imposter syndrome. Like, well, dude, I've been in deal with imposter syndrome. How am I going to land when I go to the club managers? And what you just said there is exactly what I uncovered. I was like, wow, most of the people that are in GM roles started as no different than I did. Not to say they were in turf man. I actually started in the bag room and I was kicked out within 48 hours and they said, go down to the maintenance shed. That's where you can work. But no, like that's 100%. And the welcome, our team, Meredith and Mary both said it. Like, I was surprised. It sounds so like stupid even thinking that, but like, I was so surprised how welcome we were and the conversation integrated into conversations with people. And I don't know if you're a superintendent listening to this and you've never been to the Club Managers Association, probably like many of you, I once thought, oh boy, it's going to be a stuffy crowd, suit and tie, not even close. And I think that it gave me a very different perception and how to relate to a club manager, general manager. And like you said, I mean, I was very grateful how many GMs that we've worked with their superintendent or their clubs that made a point to come up and say hello. Dude, you don't know how much like motivation that was for me.
Yeah.
And it sounds, again, I hate using the word imposter syndrome, but it was like, hey, now I belong. Like, I'm part of the group.
It's Tyler, it's the real thing. And I think that's that's one of the best parts of CMA, all the things that they do and the way that they constantly invest in other folks and reinvest in the industry as a whole. And to me, I think it's one of the best things in the world. And, I cannot imagine, honestly, that there is any other career that I could possibly be in that has been as rewarding as this. But yet it's one of those careers that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And the more you put in, the more rewarding it is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And my last kind of comment too on this specific thing for, superintendents is I was impressed to see that. I mean, there's probably a couple dozen superintendents that attended it with their GM. You're going to talk about building a relationship and your GM and your club feeling really good about you as a team leader, a department head. Going to that show shows that sort of cohesion and unity. And you'll give a different perspective versus, oh man, they keep telling me no, why I can't get more money for drainage or irrigation, whatever. Like, putting yourself out there, you get the perspective of, okay, now I see this is a global industry. This isn't just grounds, golf, F&B. It is very immersive. So I appreciate my kind of last comments for you is anything that we missed that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about today. But I think we hit a pretty wide ranging.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Tyler, a question that I had for you is, I know that there are challenges in the superintendent world, right? Where there's declining interest in the agronomy field as a whole. And I'm curious to, what you see the future is in agronomy, because I look at this that says, all right, we've seen nationally sort of the pressure that's put on these four-year universities versus, I guess, what some folks might refer to as these other types of jobs. I hate to use the word blue collar, but, electricians and HVAC and all those things, which are, to me, that's how I grew up, right? With my dad in the construction industry. The importance of those roles in agronomy is right there too. Yet, it has the potential for people to make an incredible living. Like, what do you see with this?
Wow, this is a real fun discussion. Maybe this will be like we got to send a proposal like for a roundtable discussion at CMA next year. So that I'll try to keep it focused. I think for the haves, they're still going to struggle with finding good people at those lower level assistant type roles. They just are. They're just not, the supply is not there. They're going to struggle finding assistant equipment technicians, right? And in an operation like yours, you need that support staff. It's not just the equipment manager. They need one or two people to help support them just because of the scale of the operation. So I think your average club is already feeling that pressure of, wow, I'm not getting qualified people. What are we going to do as a business? And so I think there is a real aspect that a portion of this industry is going to have unqualified people to do the job. And the trades, I think, as a society have kind of refocused on you can make a lot of money. I mean, it's not uncommon now. I would say bare minimum for entry point for us to start an assistant search, $80,000. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. And that's not because, hey, we're trying to drive salaries up. It's the reality that like to get somebody to move into this, that's what it's going to be. So the cost to staff alone are going to be hard. I think automation and some of those things coming out, they're all really good, but it's a field-based job. I mean, you can't, what's a robot going to tell you that you got willed on the 7th green on 3 o'clock on a Sunday? No. So you still need to have somebody there that visually is inspecting that. So what I think, and this was what I saw at Sparrows Point, and it has been truthful. My simple truth is the best form of recruiting is developing people from within. And for a couple of reasons. One, if they love working there and they're not looking for to move to a different part of the country, they're rooted there. And so if you can find a way to develop them into a spray tech, into an irrigation tech, maybe that takes 2 to 3 years. That's a heck of a lot cheaper. And it's more rewarding to have somebody grow from within.
100%.
You know what I mean? So like, I think it's what I've seen on the search side is reinforced. That is the way I would go. So
Understood.
So that's like one avenue of it. Right. And I think that conversation is not going to get easier. It's going to get harder. It's going to get harder for clubs. And I think if I'm a GM, if I'm a club, I'm evaluating how do we develop our team and making that a focus point and helping the superintendent really learn those delegation skills and developing, even if it just looks like, hey, this person shows up, man, dude, that's better than what most people are just coming up and showing up when it's 90 degrees. Like that's the person you want to invest into.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think there's like a reframing of what does qualified look like in this industry, and it's going to evolve. But I think every club's different. Like that's kind of how we approach the assistant jobs too, is every club's going to define success slightly differently. I think it's our job, and as a company, what I've certainly gained the confidence is to say, here's the reality of the industry. Here's how we're going to best approach this. And you're going to best approach this because there's just not that supply.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you mentioned a big thing about the investment and the ability to be able to promote from within. Huge. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. I think the equipment manager side, man, is like another one. I got asked this in the CMA presentation. What's the most difficult position? It's that equipment manager. And I think there needs to be continued education on the value of that, probably similar to like an executive chef.
Yeah.
Their oversight of like a huge asset and like it's hard to look at that equipment role as like a revenue generator, but you don't got good quality of cut. You're spending more money on fungicides and everything else.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I mean, you made it look really easy for us. And very quick. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So, well, Scott's he's a home run. He's a really good person, but there's, here's a good example. He came from the automotive world before he got into golf courses.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time here with me today and look forward to, I will absolutely hit you up on that. Come to a leadership meeting.
Please do.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Anytime.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.